університету у співпраці із фондом Конрада Аденауера в Україні та Євангелічною церквою Німеччини.
Свідчення стійкості в часі війни, реінтеграція громад та ветеранів, українські спільноти за кордоном, переслідування релігійних спільнот на тимчасово окупованих територіях. Ці та інші питання обговорять експерти з України та за кордону.
У рамках міжнародного форуму відбудуться круглі столи, панельні дискусії, семінари, виставки, майстер-класи. Запрошуємо молодь, активних громадян, студентів, освітян, журналістів, представників релігійних та громадських організацій до участі.
Реєстрація та деталі на сайті is.uku.edu.ua. Форум відбудеться у гібридному форматі – наживо та онлайн.
Доброго дня усім. Перед початком нашої панелі
Hello everyone, I would like to welcome. We will have some announcement from Oleksandra Mazur, community of Olenivka. Oleksandra, if you are with us. Yes, I am with you, but unfortunately I cannot turn the camera on because I don't have the right to have my camera on. No, unfortunately. I would like to welcome everyone. I represent Olenivka community. This is an NGO of families of military affected by mass killings in Olenivka. We support the families of those who were killed, or those who were injured, those who are still in captivity in Olenivka. It's very important for me to join this panel because we speak a lot about resilience, community resilience, and as you probably understand, the situation is not easy for us psychologically, emotionally speaking. We try to find some opportunities to build this resilience within us, to be able to remain effective, as I mentioned, since early 2023. We are operational. We want to have the day of commemoration of those who died in Olenivka. We have this day mentioned in the media elsewhere. However, we do not have the official day for commemoration. That is why I would like to mention this topic, and I felt like it is important for me to join you and to mention you that we need this day, the day to commemorate those people who died in Olenivka, those who were executed there, as well as civilians. It's important for us to commemorate all the victims and to remember this day, to have communication ongoing. Our community is open for that. I would like to express gratitude to the organizers for openness in our interaction. It's important to share our ideas, share information, to cooperate and to support our army. Thank you. We are open for further cooperation. Thank you for informing us about that. Before we start this panel, I would like to ask Reverend Yaroslav, who is a military chaplain, to start with the prayer. And then we will start the discussion itself. The fire is being set. Thank you. I would like to welcome everyone. I'm Tetiana Kalenychenko. It is a great pleasure and privilege for me to moderate this panel. You can check it in the agenda. Panel discussion 1 among one's own reintegration of communities and military personnel. This is not reintegration in community. This is not preparing communities for reintegration. It is collective action. And this is something which is at the core of this discussion, some technical points. In case we have an air raid alert and there will be a danger of missile strikes, we will have to go to the basement, to the shelter. We will follow Irina, who will give us instructions where to go. If any of you need simultaneous interpretation, you can take a headset during the discussion and to listen to interpretation. And before that, I would like to say that we do not only have speeches or presentations here, it is more of a dialogue format. We know that there are many questions about the military, about reintegration, and taking into consideration the speakers invited, we have a very great opportunity to be able to do that, to ask your questions and to listen to the answers. We will start with Olena Kopina, who is a facilitator, a psychologist. She's a mother of a soldier. She's a developer of a Defender at Home program. Last year, this program was presented in many regions of Ukraine. And then we will proceed with the Q&A. Because I thought that we will start with the introduction and the very topic. I am from Kharkiv. I am Olena Kopina. I've been working on the topic of reintegration since 2015, when we had already the veterans of anti-terrorist operation. I would like to say that my presence here could be explained by the fact that I'm a mother of a soldier. On the 25th of February of 2022, my son got enlisted, and 8 months ago he went missing in Bakhmut. When he joined the army, I understood that when he returns, he will return to his family, to his wife, to his parents, to his daughter. He'll be back at work, in his community. And then I started thinking whether the community was ready for his comeback and for further developments. So I started with the training. That was the name of the training, One Amongst One's Own. It turned into a program, 1 day, 2 day program for communities, for representatives of communities of different levels, those who work in services, providing social services, educational sector, those who represent the religious dimension. We have already had 14 trainings in all the parts of Ukraine. During these trainings, I felt that, in fact, communities are not ready for our children, our husbands, wives, daughters returning. And that was not so much of a disappointment. It is not really a disappointment that I felt. This is just food for thought. When I try to reflect upon this theme, the theme of one among one's own, our soldiers, both male, female, when they return, and about accepting them as they are when they return. I was really inspired by the first panel that we have had today. There were some references to the ancient times. When I was thinking about ideas I would like to share with you. I thought about the Odyssey by Homer, and Odyssey was a man who went to fight, although it was not his war, and he underwent many trials before he returned home. When he was on his way home, there was hell that he had to go to Scylla and Charybdis, and many other things that he didn't expect. He was back to his loving wife, and she also had her own suffering. He was back to peaceful life, to the world that he built. When we think that all our soldiers are to some extent like Odysseys, some of them, they have to return because of their injuries, some physical health related issues. And what about the rest of them who will go back? Some of them will go back to the house that was destroyed because it was destroyed by bloody racists, as my granddaughter says. She's just a 3-year-old kid, but she understands what the enemy is doing to us. If they have also to go back to the families where there are some losses because of the war. Also, there are some families who were not ready to wait for so long. They will return into communities which have a certain level of perception. What I also find very illustrative about this waiting, the biology of behavior by Robert Sapolsky in his book states that at a biological level, volens, nolens, we have the division between those people who belong to us and those who do not belong to us. That could be explained by the activity of amygdala, which acts largely instinctively. I agree with that because our neocortex gets activated much later as compared to instinctive reactions that we have. And we can see it from the human behavior. Those people who do social research, sociologists, claim that we divide those people whom we meet into groups, the people who belong to our group and who do not. And the key principle here is that we have some connections which could connect us. So I take a look at you and I understand that you will do no harm to me, that there is nothing bad that you want to do to me, that you're not sly or insidious. What about the second group, the strangers group? These are people who have different religious convictions, different values. They can belong to a different race. They can represent a different nationality from others. The others are also the people who are carriers of a different identity, and this identity also consists of some pillars. These are some convictions of others, some beliefs that we have, everyday rituals, emotional experience, as well as certain taboos. With regard to civilians and military, we can say that they represent totally different worlds. And it's not because it is, good and bad. It's because of the life experience that we have. Because there are some people who have combat experience and there are some people who have no such experience. And it's interesting to see how this trust is being built. If you really want to have trust, you can do it through everyday relationships and the way they are shaped. For example, if you have a fence around the church, or we have humanitarian aid, we have some donations for electronic warfare for the military, and I know that I can trust you, that you belong to my group of people because we share the same values. But if you speak about the others, it means that I will trust you provided you behave properly, and this proper behavior is about norms. In different societies, in a smaller society, in a society in a global sense, These norms, they hinge on our everyday practices and traditions. If we take a look at our norms, it's important for us that people behave in the way that suits us. In our society, a norm is not to demonstrate aggression. Another norm is not to be too emotional. Our norm is to remain strong, to be resilient. And those militaries who returned as Odyssey did from very scary places that we cannot even think of, they have no right to be themselves, and we treat them as the others. This is what we have heard during the first panel discussion, the social patterns that we are already witnessing, something that distinguishes these groups, those that we belong to and the others, civilians and defenders of ours. This is our striving to have heroization, to glorify them. This is attaching some ideal features to those people. You did something that I do not do because I cannot allow myself to do that, or I don't want to. And when I glorify, when I idolize, there could be the opposite reaction when people they really show their true colors, and there could be a lot of disappointment. We start denigrating everything. Just think back of those times of the beginning of the war, anti-terrorist operation veterans. What was the attitude towards them as people who are deeply traumatized by war? Also, there is another concept that you did so much, and people try to do everything for you. We will give you so much care and protection, and if you don't like it, it is your problem. It is once again about stigma. It is about labeling that we have. We cannot say that it's bad, all of that. In my opinion, this is a way of protect yourself. This is psychological coping. It's difficult for me to deal with the reactions and emotions of another person. I'm scared that I will have to change my life because my husband is next to me, because my colleague is next to me, or because of fellow citizens who have had a different experience. And when we have an answer to this question, I usually am skeptical if there are people who claim that they have answers and recipes to everything. However, I already have some experience with reintegration of military. When they are part of the community again, it really gives us very good collective actions. We will speak more about the feeling of guilt and shame. Thank you for the name of this panel discussion. We really want to understand how to change this dynamic for the others not to be others anymore. I would like to give the floor to Pavlo Koval, who is a veteran head of the UCU Office for Veterans and their families. Please share your experience.
Glory to Jesus Christ. My name is Pavlo, and I'm a veteran. I took part in armed hostilities during the full-scale invasion. I was wounded, and I was released from service because of my health conditions. And I'm also head of the Office for Veterans and their families. And the Ukrainian Catholic University is generally one big community, so our vision of this office in the beginning was that, many active combatants are, and veterans, they are there. They are a community, so we thought we do have this community, so we have to think about it. And many things we have in our office were made for the military community. And we can say that the university and the office meet the criteria for a community. But what concerns the resilience, this is a strategic area. In the beginning, this was a long game, so it's just these two questions are answered because we are a community and we are a big community, and those combatants who will come, they can come to the university and they feel the sense of belonging. They know that they are waited for and that they are expected, because at the front lines, there are many stories. Most of them, of course, are connected with the families, but sometimes people have no one waiting for them, and then they go to unjustified risks. And in our case, those who come, they say it's very good we are being waited for as a student, as students, as employees, as members of the community. So this is an entrance point for veterans who return. And this year we already have veterans who entered the university and decided to get higher education, and they come to me, to my office, because our office is like an entry point. We don't provide many services. This is more of the consultation services, advisory services. I communicate with various structures, because if a veteran needs some legal support, we have a legal clinic which is specialized in that. It is one of the best because it has certain benefits. They are one of the few who provide support to specific cases, and many people provide legal services in Ukraine, because but they say we will compile the documents, but you will have to do everything on your own, and that is why the legal clinic has very positive results here. The same goes about psychological services. There are also some spiritual talks and discussions. So we had one veteran who returned from captivity. He wasn't a believer, but after captivity he started believing in God. He wrote a book and he came with this request: I want to talk to someone of the pastors about my book, about what I've seen, about my experience. So there are very different requests people have. So we are a kind of an entry point, and then we move on depending on the situation. It's more of an individual approach at the moment, because we don't have that many veterans coming to us at the moment, but for the future I see the possibility of referral. And there's another thing that was mentioned also. The first point of return is the family for any veterans. So Office for Work with Veterans and their families is also built for work with families. This is another entry point, because if there is no work there, but other trainings in psychology or something else will not be relevant, because the family is falling apart. And when the family is falling apart, in many cases people go back to the front lines, or there may be some other situations. So I would like to stress that the communities have to work with families, while combatants and the military are in the army. We have to work with the families, and it should be an important part of our work, because these are the places people go back to. And many families are destroyed before these people come back, while they are still in service. So I think the work for priests, for communities, those who are close to the families, that's a big part of work. So that's it. Tell us where you can be found physically. Work in Sheptytsky Center, that's 5th floor, room 528. So those who are from the UCU community, please come if you have any questions or suggestions. I've had some meetings with the various fathers. One of them is the director of the Nazareth Rehabilitation Center and so on. So we get various requests. And one of the things I do when I speak about establishing communication and work and vision inside the community, this also works for external communication, because I understand that university is not so big in terms of being able to provide all the services the veterans need. That's why I am discussing the possibilities of cooperation with various NGOs, and if we are not specializing in something, I refer people to these organizations, and I know that I can give them a specific phone number and a name of a specific person who can help them. And sometimes we have cases when a person didn't get there, well, even though they intended, so you need to do some follow-up. And here we can also cooperate with the governmental structures, because the center of combatant center in Lviv does a lot of job, a lot of work. So we have to speak here also about the municipal institutions. They work, they have resources, they have experience, and they also know how to deal with those problems, because they started working back in times of the anti-terrorist operation. So, well, please come to us. I'm not always in the office because I'm the only person there, and I'm often invited to various discussions and so on, but you can always write me to the email or give me a call, and I will help you as much as I can. When I left military service, I decided that since I cannot fight with weapons, I will invest my time and my resources into service. That's why the Ukrainian Catholic University appeared to be a great place for me, because I wasn't from their community. I didn't study here. I didn't work here. I was from different communities. Communities are important for me because communities usually have their values, and this is what I liked in the Ukrainian Catholic University. They have their values, they have their community, and this is about service for me. So and this is one of those points why which persuaded me that I should be doing this at university. Well, sorry for making you come here during the nighttime working hours. I often hear from the priests we work with, give us contact details of an adequate veteran who can be asked stupid questions and who can be asked where to go next. And this is very closely related also to some theological issues. So I would like to give the floor to Mr. Dyatlyk, who is a theologian and manager of theological education in Ukraine. And I would like to ask him to share his personal family experience and also the experience from the point of view of theology. Thank you, Tetiana. Thank you for the invitation and for the honor of being here among you. I work in the field of development of Protestant theological education, although I'm also involved into the development of the theological education at the Ministry of Education. We're working on the new law on higher education, and this is work on the border line between the church and the society. And here in this room we have other people who are also at this borderline, so to say, where on the one side you have the church, on the other side you have the society. And I've been very active as a volunteer in 2014 to 2016. I helped the 14th Brigade and the others, and then I returned to my volunteering activities after the full-scale invasion. I travel a lot to the south and east of Ukraine, and there are many questions, theological questions, when we speak about the role of church in life of veterans and the role of veterans in life of the church. And I would like to rather describe it as the problems of the Protestant or evangelical church, but I think it might be relevant also for Orthodox or Catholic churches, and some moments would be also understandable for them and they could take them into account. what I've been observing is that we have been talking about inclusion of veterans in the society, and I'm very grateful to Olena for, the fact that we had a training for the leaders of 6 or 7 churches in Rivne. When we speak about the role of church in the society and in life of the veterans, I would like to outline several areas which the church is lacking and which the understanding of pastors are lacking as well. This is the theology of scars. Because now we have a lot of trauma healing talks. It's becoming very fashionable. Wherever you go, wherever you look, it's you can see those posters about healing, and people want to heal the others, not even asking whether a person needs this healing. And on the other hand, this problem of healing the others has some hidden expectations that you will be able to heal it in such a way that you will not, your scars will not be visible because you're inconvenient when you have these scars. We want to heal you for the comfort of our community, and that is why we need to challenge the church in terms of its work with the society and with the veterans. What is the theology of scar? It's about how to accept these scars and to live with them in the community and in the family and live with them until the rest of your life. So thank you all. And the second problem I've been observing, and I think it will still lead to some spiritual explosion or maybe a social explosion, I'm not sure, in the context of the church. This is a question of what heroism is. When my brother was killed in July, one pastor asked me whether he had time to repent because he went to kill people, and if he didn't repent, then God will not accept him. That was not a great support and not a very good trauma healing approach. Another pastor told me, you must have prayed not enough. Your family and Andriy himself, because he was killed. If he prayed enough, God would have preserved him and he wouldn't have been killed. And the question of heroism, what is it? The church should start asking this question. I can only see resistance at the moment. There are some communities and some movements where we are not afraid of talking about it, but if we speak about the evangelical church in general, it's a very complicated issue. The questions are, who is a hero, and should we stress this heroism? What is patriotism? Who has this moral life to call other people to go to the front lines, to serve in the army, and so on? Another challenge is the reconsideration of masculinity. This is what I can see right now because there are many women veterans and there will be more of them in the future. So what is their role in the church? Who is a man in the eyes of God? And what is real bravery and masculinity in the church understanding, or are there other signs that can be observed in church? And another thing, also a very painful one, this is the theology of memory. We do not want to recall. I visited dozens and dozens of churches in Ukraine, and you would rarely hear a sermon which would touch upon the matters of war. I know that we need some space without war, and the church very often becomes this space because you have space, war at work, you have war at home, on the news, you have war in your relations with your family. But it's also important to remember, how do we remember? Who do we remember? Who do we remember with? And if we want this to become a part of our community, we have to remember together with them. And the last one, this is the reconsideration of holiness. What is holiness for a person with scars? Can we set those high expectations in various fields of life, including family life, when you have this brokenness inside? And how do we work with these matters in the context of church, working with the divine holiness? Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Taras. And I would like to give the floor to Father Volodymyr Kotkevych from the Sokal-Zhovkva Eparchy of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church. And I would like to ask you to share the perspective of the Greek Catholic Church and also what you see happening in the region, both in terms of reintegration of the combatants and veterans, and how much work with families should be done, considering the fact that most veterans have gone back.
Glory to Jesus Christ. If you speak about one amongst one's own, this is also a parish, this is also a church, and Greek Catholics, as well as others, try our best to help people in these challenges of war. There could be different ways of achieving that. We have Caritas, we have priests working with us. With Caritas, several days ago, we had a retreat for families of military in Brykhovichy. Well, these are the families who had losses, actually, because they lost their close one in war, who were militaries. We know the church is the institution which is more trusted, that people turn to. At the same time, it is a responsibility when we take all of that into consideration. What is the authenticity of churches? What is something that churches can do as compared to other institutions which cannot do that? The first one is a prayer that you can hear during liturgy, and it's really important for us to have such common prayers of communities, of families, veterans. And I would like to rephrase here Marcus Aurelius, that if you really want to be who you are, you need to be in solitude, you need to be on your own. I think that what is special about church, and the fact that every time we hear so much about us being brave, being strong, but we cannot be strong 24/7. There are some moments when we really need to shift to something else. And sometimes we need to have a good cry. In church, you can really do that. You can cry, but not in a depressive way, but you can be healed by these tears of yours, and you can also become stronger. There are challenges that we're also facing. We have priests in our parishes. These priests were trained not under war circumstances, when we didn't even talk about the possibility of this happening. They learned many things. They were taught many things, many subjects. However, when it comes to communication, without wounding a person, sometimes it is a challenge for them. They don't know how to do that. The first principle that we all have to follow to is do no harm. There are some red lines. They are important because when we cross these red lines, even we have a very good intention and we want to help the person, we can do this harm by offending a person. We had some trainings, but apart of that, we wanted to have a platform, and those people that you see here supported us with this initiative. We wanted to have a system, but now with this system, you know whom to turn to. We know that a priest is a person who cannot speak. We cannot see that this is an absolute authority for us. This is the person who knows something, but it doesn't mean that they know it all. And if I don't know something, I can go to somebody and ask for help. It could be another priest, a psychologist, it could be a social worker that I can refer this person to. This system of relations gives us a very good result in our parishes, in our communities, where we have already started using this system. There are some other cases, the cases of suicide, which is a separate challenge in our... We already know about several cases when soldiers return to have their vacation and they return because of their health condition and they commit a suicide. And in our tradition, we know that this is the worst sin ever. And that is why the family feels tarnished that that was the hero and look what he did. I think that this is the challenge because it is about our take on such situations when we have a person who was traumatized, and church needs to have tools to be able to help these families and these people to heal. I think that here we have more questions than answers. It is important for us to find answers, and this is what we are doing today. However, when we have this intersection, when we speak about the state and we speak about church, we have different religious communities, it means that this is a very good sign. It means that we are really mindful of all the challenges we are faced with. Thank you, Reverend. Thank you for sharing your experience. Also take into consideration the church perspective. I think it is a very good moment for us to also to pass it over to our military. They are from the city of Sheptytsky, which used to be the city of Chervonograd. We have the officer of the 3rd Battalion of the Separate Brigade, Olak. I hope that I named your brigade correctly. Yes, correct me if I'm wrong. Could you tell us more about your experience, about what you face? Also, I have to ask another question. What is okay to say or not to say, to do or not to say? What are do's and don'ts? Maybe you could also share your experience with us. Yes, thank you. Yes, I have recently become a military psychologist. It's only recent. It's quite a deep and interesting question because you know that when soldiers return to civilian life, it's a very different experience. So you had a civilian person, being it a man or a woman. You also know that we have women and girls in the army, so they were civilians. Then they find themselves in a military situation. There are certain restrictions that are imposed on them. Well, it's about different orders and instructions and commands, and your freedom of movement is limited to some extent. And the third stage is when you're fighting when you already are in combat. And another one is transition, because for a civilian, you cannot become a military just like that. You need to undergo some training, and this is a gradual process, and you really need to have some interest. So you have a military who could also become a professional military after all the training. A very common problem is that a professional military, they go on vacation and they return after receiving an injury. They do not undergo a gradual reintegration. So they go back from a combat zone to the civilian life, and it is very easy for them to get overwhelmed. We need some gradual approach. We need a gradual transition between these two stages. And I think that it is something that we need to do step by step. You know, for us not to have this hot to cold water transition, it is a step by step approach to be taken. What about do's and don'ts? Not to ask, what did you do there? Did you kill somebody? I think that, well, many people know about that. However, we need more training. Schools, churches are very good platforms for dissemination of this information about communication with military, how to offer your support, doing no harm. Sometimes there is a soldier, he comes to his place or city and he hears a very loud sound, so he experiences a certain reaction because of that. It could be stupor and many other things, and people, they run away. They don't know how to react. They are scared of this person. We need to teach people how to approach, what to say, what not to say, how to behave. You need to understand that these people have such a big load on their physical health as well as emotional health. It is immense what they are experiencing. That is why we really need to teach people how to do that. We need to engage people to differ. We need to engage our military to different projects for them to feel needed. Those of them who are no longer in the army, there could be militaries, veterans with disabilities, amputees. For example, when they're already dismissed from the army, from the military service, it's important to have somebody who can help them. Communities, they know that there will be a veteran joining their community again, and he or she will have some issues to be figured out, accommodation related, subsidies, and so on and so forth. We need to have an understanding that they need some help, because it could be difficult for people even to reach these places. Maybe they don't know about all legal aspects or about healthcare problems that they need to solve. It could be so many things. On weekends, any other days, they can go to schools. There could be some barbecues, plays, working with children, youth, for these people to feel needed, not to feel abandoned. They fulfilled their duty, they defended their motherland, and it is the function of the motherland to take care of them now. Well, there are many things, of course, that could be said here. However, this is briefly everything I wanted to say. If you have any questions, I will be happy to take these questions. Yes, I think that we will have questions. And I think that this is the question about expressing gratitude and what is the proper way of doing that. However, I also wanted to ask Reverend Yaroslav Wojtyk, who is a full-time chaplain of one of the brigades. Could you please share your perspective? Because on the one hand, we have some militaries, their families, and we try to help them. On the other hand, we already have veterans, those combatants who are returning. I am Yaroslav. I am a full-time chaplain, and I'm also a priest in the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church. I'm also a serviceman, and I am a military chaplain. The motivation of me is that I was not ready for the full-scale invasion of the enemy. That is why I found it to be a very painful experience. I had many concerns. Now I have many friends who joined the army voluntarily. They say that they are lacking some attention, or they needed somebody to confess into. All those soldiers who are defending us, they have one experience, but there are families, they celebrate Christmas, Easter without their husbands, sons and brothers, or any other religious holidays. Well, of course, not all of them, but many shared with me using their phones. That is why I try to think how to help them, how to get closer to them. And originally, I thought of being a volunteer. We know very little about the army. We know very little about the order and everything and how soldiers live there. Very often when they return, they do not share this information, and sometimes these conditions are very important for them, the way they fulfill their duties, what they do, what they eat. If you meet a person who is very talkative, then probably that's the question of their whereabouts and whether they actually were there, because usually these people, they have new families there built. These are families, members of these families wear military uniforms now. That is why I had this intention to help. I didn't want to stand aside. As a priest, I understood that it was important for me to be able to help. Sometimes we joke in the army that those who are over 50, this is a separate rank, a separate category of military, because you're limited in what you can do. However, if all of us try to do something to contribute with what we have for us to defeat our enemies sooner, that means a lot. I was not wearing pink tinted glasses. I knew that it was important to be involved and to contribute. That is why when I met our soldiers, I realized that we need to have some experience, we need to have some means how to help. However, our society doesn't have it. We don't have it in our everyday life, in our healthcare system, in church. We are gaining this experience. This is something new what we are facing. Hence, my goal is to be of help to those who are in need, regardless of their creed or their religious beliefs. It's important for me to understand the needs of all the people, and when the time comes to be able to share this experience with those who are after us. We are at war right now. It is a problem. However, when the war is over, the problem will remain. Sometimes we live with some fears. From my experience, being here is more terrifying sometimes, more frightening than being with your comrades in some hot spots. You see solidarity, you see alignment, you see fraternal unity. They are true family. The fact that they have to return home, and sometimes it is challenging. One of my comrades from our brigade, when he was going home for vacation, he said that I don't want to go home. And I said, why? You have an opportunity to spend some time with your family, with your friends. And he said, they will tire me so much that I will go back sick, because we know that families, friends, they are not ready to ask proper questions and to take your true interest into consideration, just without trying to be too nosy. Sometimes it is not easy to return after your time spent in the army. That is why we need to pay more attention to families, especially when we have widows with children, or when we have a mother who loses her son or her daughter. We know how deep this feeling is for those who encounter these losses. That is why for soldiers to return to their regular lives, we need to apply a lot of efforts for that to happen smoothly. There is another situation when we have a soldier who is wounded or after rehabilitation. He or she is already a different person. They go back to a different life. That is why sometimes there is a lack of understanding in communication. There were many militaries that I met who had to go to the military medical commission, and military say that yes, it's really important to really be good to people, to understand them, because doctors and the military, they could have different takes on the same thing. They can have different perspectives on individual cases of militaries at school, at hospitals, potential employers, all layers of society. We need to deliver this message that sometimes people have severe injuries. It's not that you can do everything right away. You need some time to adapt, once again, to go back to this life. And these are different worlds. From one world you go to another one. And once again, you need to make this transition back to your civilian life. Some people, they ask for prayer. Some people say that it is enough that you are here. And there are some people who just want to talk, and that's everything they want. It's not the same as it is in a religious setting, that there are some people, they come, they gather together to pray. Sometimes the most important thing for us is just to express solidarity. This is what I can see, that regardless of their religious beliefs and creed, they have such a deep feeling of respect to each other, to fellow soldiers. So it is one thing when you have a common prayer and blessing for all of them, and then it is a different case when there is an individual request that you have.
Sometimes people come to you as a priest to ask you about a piece of advice about family members, or to confess, or to get some experience, to learn some truth. So this is what I've mentioned. Experience is important. You need to process it and pass it on to those who come to you. So this is what I do. This is my goal. I want to be useful and to know as much as possible, to be useful for the others, and to help those who will come, and to pass on this knowledge to those who will come after us. Would like to thank all the speakers for these ideas they've expressed, and now we are opening the floor for your questions. Please remember, there are no bad or wrong questions, so you have a chance to ask any question which you may have been shy to ask. You can ask it in a form like one friend of mine is very interested in it, but can't ask it himself, so I would ask it instead of him. And before people ask questions, I would like to share a form of mild adaptation during the leave. My husband is a veteran, and our neighbor is serving in the army right now. And when he comes for a couple of days of leave, he first comes to us. He drinks coffee with my husband, smokes, talks to him, and then he goes to his family because he needs to get ready for that. So these adaptation zones may look very primitive, but may be quite helpful. Do we have any questions in the room? Yes, please. Do we have a volunteer with a microphone to help us? I would like to thank all the speakers for the stories you shared. My name is Maria. I'm a student of the Kyiv Orthodox Theological Academy. And as I've noticed, in the society, there is this dichotomy on fears of the servicemen returning. Some of us say that they will be very apathetic and they will not be willing to participate in any conflicts in the society, and this will make our society very numb. And then another camp says that they will all be very angry because will not see the picture they've been fighting for, and they will start displaying certain aggression here. So my question is, should we be afraid of anything, and what is it that we should be afraid of, and what should we be preparing for? Thank you for your question. Who would like to start answering? Everyone can answer the question. Thank you for mentioning this dichotomy, because they relate not only to this question. As a psychotherapist, I see very many divisions, and also in attitudes to the combatants. I wouldn't like to generalize what we have to prepare for. I'd ask what I can prepare for here and now. I personally prepare that I will accept my son for who he is, and I will accept everything he brings with him, pain, aggression, and other emotions. And living through this will be my task. Ensuring conditions for adaptation and rehabilitation, that will be my task. Speaking of the community as a person, what should we be getting ready for? We should prepare for what we can give and what we can offer, while taking into account what we already have, because our law on the status of veterans and social guarantees promises a lot, but it doesn't meet the reality. So the community has to think about whether they have their social infrastructure ready, whether they can prepare it to provide adequate social services. They have to realize that there will be not enough privileges for everyone, and what do we do with that? We have to train specialists who will be working with the families and with the combatants themselves, and establishing contact with those who return directly, and seeing a specific person with specific needs. And not to do good forcefully, but just asking person, what do you need? What does your family need? So just, this is what we have to do, preparing ourselves and preparing for the fact that these people will need to have some specific needs, and we need to be able to meet these needs. Do you know, Maria, this is a very interesting question, and we very often complicate things. Starting from December last year, I've been working more with the combatants, and thanks God I've never had any conflicts with them. I was in a hospital where they brought wounded combatants, and they feel a lot of pain. And you need to find an individual approach because people will have different attitudes to that than people in rehabilitation, people in their military units, people in the area of active hostilities. They are all different, but you can actually understand and hear everyone and anyone. And the only thing you need is to want to do that, not just come and say, this is how it should be. The first thing is to listen to a person. So if we dig deeper in our families, in our society, it seems to me we lack this asking for advice and giving advice so that we sit down and talk to each other and give advice to each other. And this presents many difficulties for the future life, for what is going to happen in the future. So it's not, you shouldn't expect aggression from people who return. I know a person who was a stormtrooper, and then he returned, and he seems to control himself, but not completely. So as a result of the wounds he had, he will never be the same as he used to be. But he's a very good person, and when you talk to him, he's very polite. And we were in a camp, and I saw how he interacted with children, and children liked him. So if you're open to a person, you shouldn't be expecting aggression from them. They are people just as us. It's just that our society actually puts labels on them, a disabled person or a lost person. No, they just need some understanding. They need to be understood. And if we want to explain something, as they taught me in the seminary, we read Dale Carnegie's ways to communicate with people. This became very helpful right now. I didn't need it in the past. Learn to keep silent, learn to listen, learn to explain your opinion to that person. They will be active, because I believe that especially those younger warriors, they will have to study and they should have some life goals after the war. They have to build this new country. So we cannot go back to the old ways. And we have new life, new cases. We determined what the future will look like. So I treat them very simply, just as I would like to be treated. And we find dialogue, we come to some agreement, regardless of what condition a person is in. So we shouldn't be, working on the stereotypes. So we should just try to understand them and build our life together. One aspect I would like to mention, and that is here in the society amongst civilian Ukrainians, and there's a lot of it lately, this is trying to shift responsibility. And this aspect is very well noticeable here. They say like the combatants will return and bring everything into order. But when people come back from war, they need a lot of time to restore their physical and psycho-emotional condition. They start engaging into something when there is some disrespect to the dignity of their fellows. In other cases, no. And in this case, we also see this story of shifting responsibility. It's like, it's not for us, the state should do this. It's not for community to do. Well, somebody has to send us a person who will be taking care of this. We are a community, we distribute our funds, but let the state pay for this expert. But he will be a member of our community, will be serving our community. And there are many cases like that. So it was mentioned before that we have start from ourselves. What can we do at the level of communities? And I'm speaking here about small communities, not like Lviv or Kyiv, because in fact, many places are quite indicative. They have more possibilities. There are communities which really go ahead and there are stories where they conduct trainings for experts who will be the case managers for veterans who return, and in some cases the stories are very sad because you understand that these people will have to work with veterans. And I would like to stress this responsibility once again. Let's start from thinking, what can I do? Then from what can my family do? What can my community do? And then during those next steps, you will need financing, you will need training, you will need to engage some specialists, because as I've mentioned about our office, we cannot provide all services, but my task is just to find a person who can provide the service the person needs. Well, no matter how generally we discuss things, but we come down to human, person-to-person relations. This is a person who returned and a person who's been waiting. And my experience of helping is helping to recall their senses, to remember their senses, because a family, this is the first circle of people a person comes back to. They had the relations of love, they had plans, they had children, and these senses speak to their hearts. It's important to have a so-called moderators who can help them restore the senses, because sometimes these emotional swings work in such a manner that these senses remain somewhere in the past and you can have to bring them back. Dante had Virgil who helped him go through hell and accompanied him there. So this support has to be long-term. You need to restore those things. And this is my experience as a priest, working with those soldiers who are here in the hospital in Lviv. There are families waiting for them, children, and all those complications when they look at their father, and the father is different, but both were suffering. And these senses, these elevated senses, help establish contact, but you need some support from a side. But this has to be support from a person both sides trust. I would just like to add a bit. Pavlo also mentioned responsibility in the language of psychologists. This is also projection. So our society projects on the military that they will be either very passive or very aggressive. But this is what we have in us. And this fear of conflicts, this is, by the way, a very evaluative thing. I've been working with conflicts since 2014. I started with Tetiana in Dialogue in Action with Tarasov, and conflict is a great possibility to realize what is happening and where to move. And the question is what methods we have to cope with that. And I think we can share that. I think we will speak about that later. But it seems to me this is about conflict as being a very productive ground for us. Thank you. Maybe we have some more questions. Let's take turns. Glory to Jesus Christ. Thank you for your presentations, your speeches. And I just thought that no one no one planned to live in times of war, but we are learning in the process. So I would like to hear some piece of advice from you for us as seminarians, those who study in times of war, and those who live in times of war. Maybe some pieces of advice from you that could be useful for us in our future service, because I've heard many opinions of older priests and just regular people that as future priests, we future priests would face difficult times. But I look at it from the point of view that these times will be difficult for us only if we don't start working right now. So I would be grateful if you could offer some cases or advice for our future. Let us listen to two other questions. Maybe they are related in some ways. Glory to Jesus Christ. My name is Dmitro. I'm from Uzhhorod, Greek Catholic Theological Academy. I have the following question. You, Taras, mentioned various theologies. And I recalled retributive theology, which we meet in poetic books. This is the Book of Job, for example. And the point is that if I'm a righteous person, the God blesses me. If I'm not a righteous person, then the God doesn't bless me. And in the Book of Job, we see the problem that the friends tell him, you sinned there. If you're suffering, that means you've sinned. And Job says, I have not sinned. And I'm sure that many servicemen, many combatants and their families, and those who have suffered from war, and who was the real witness of all that, they have these questions. What have I done to deserve this suffering? And it's interesting for me to hear your opinion about it, and maybe your personal example of how you spoke to people about that, because from the lecture of the Holy Scriptures, the fundamental theology, I know that Job said that before suffering I only heard about you, and now I can see you with my own eyes. And the righteous person, even if they die, they will find peace after death. So I also think that many people have questions about it, about the rise of evil. Well, it can break your brain if you start thinking about it. This is this enigma, if we use a Greek word, a secret we cannot comprehend. So maybe you could comment on that. Thank you.
Glory to Jesus Christ. My name is Mikhailo. I'm from Ivano-Frankivsk Seminary. I have a question about adaptation of a military who was right at the front line in hot spots. How do you see this adaptation? And can we make it compulsory to some extent for the military not to be back homes right away to mitigate these challenges? And generally, how do you see this adaptation? And okay, we can also hear from you, and then we can have all these questions together. I'm Petro. I'm a seminarian from Tel Aviv Seminary. I have a question about another aspect of resilience, because you haven't mentioned it during our panel. This small stories of the Great War expedition that we had this summer, and some soldiers, they agreed to being recorded. They share their experience about their brothers and sisters in arms who lost an interest in life because there was no interest to them as to fathers, husbands. Well, we didn't have one about children. When there were divorces happening, some not very pleasant conversations between spouses, and in some cases they actually returned to the army, to fighting, and they lost their lives there. In your practices, have you had this experience, and do we already have some information about these situations? I think that yes, we can take a pause here with our questions, because I think that the first one that we had was the question about adaptation, about preparedness of seminarists, this case management, and also there was the question about adaptations, how to make this process mandatory, or how to channel it in the right direction, how to organize the process of adaptation, I think that the first question to be taken here is the question about the role of priests. I think that priests, they have a lot of advantage here because in all communities we have them, but we know that sometimes we are lacking specialists of all kinds, but in all communities we have priests. That is why I would like to focus on small communities. We know that in bigger communities you have a wider selection of services. We know that if this person does not interfere with other people, they forget about this person, especially if this is a soldier who doesn't have a family, so there is nothing bad that they do to us, so we are fine putting up with each other. A priest is a person who knows the situation at a community level, knows the details. I think that priests, this is something similar to what I do in my line of work. Priests are those people who can establish context between a person who is in need and a person who can provide the service. Sometimes people do not know about the sources of help. They ask other veterans, their friends, family members. Priests in communities know the current situation inside out. Probably they don't know everything 100%, but they still know a lot about these communities, and they also know if these people receive support. I believe that priests can be those people who can refer for help. If there is a consultation, there was a referral to a specialist. And sometimes veterans do not do that. There could be many reasons why they do not do that. They could be scared to do that, but you can help the person. If you want to receive a social service, and we speak about smaller communities, usually people need to go somewhere, and sometimes priests, they assume this role. They drive the person to that place once or twice a week. They help the person to reach this place. And there is another point here about seminarians, about those who will serve in the future. This is the role of chaplains. These are two takes that I would like to share with you. And there is another one, family cases. It's important to work with families. So basically these are three levels. This is us working with the veterans, with the families, and also chaplaincy. When I did my service in our battalion, there were no chaplains. Now we have one chaplain per brigade, and it is really sad. Chaplains, it's not so much about courage and bravery, because we know that it is dangerous to be chaplains. Chaplains are needed on the front line. They are needed whenever we have military personnel. Of course, we have many injured who will be back, and chaplains are needed here, support is needed here. However, chaplains and mentors primarily are needed at the front line. Sometimes you do not have any military leave. You do not see your family for a very lengthy period. But if you have a chaplain, that you can be asked for help as a priest, as a spiritual father or somebody else, because you know that if you have a military assignment and you really need to talk about it with somebody. With regard to adaptation, it is not about us being obliged to do something. There is no obligation as such. That is why, of course, the state can give some powers to some agencies or authorities or institutions and some commitments. However, very often it is not about the services provided by the state. In reference to the adaptation question, it is the matter of coordination. This is alliance between different institutions, different structures, different units, religious, church-based, non-profit organizations. It is a complex effort. where different parties act together in a coordinated manner. Also, it is important that it is your own initiative. Why is it difficult to work with some veterans? Because they are not showing any initiatives. They have no desire to that. When you speak about their addictions or something else, when they're not going down, then sometimes, no matter what you do, it is to no avail. I don't really say that we do not need to work with these people. We do. It's families, services, and communities that we have to take into consideration. I've received different requests. Hello, Pavlo. There is a Belgian soldier. He received prosthesis in Belgium for 2 weeks. He'll be staying in Lviv and he needs to find some accommodation because he wants to be back. Or there is a former prisoner of war. He says that I found God and I need a spiritual mentor now, a spiritual father. There are different requests, there are different needs. Maybe there is somebody else who would like to build on what I've just said, and also something regarding the training of seminarists. It is a very good question. Do not be afraid to start with, because we always have some new challenges with all new generations of seminarists, and it is really important for us to know our strengths and our weaknesses, to know how you will respond to them. And these days, I can firmly state this, is in need of young priests. We need the youth. When we have young priests, we have very active, faithful. Also, we have new technologies used and some other means. The world and the church is really waiting for you. Of course, fear should not be an obstacle in your way, but it's important to know about your strengths and weaknesses for you to know how you're going to cope with some challenges when they arise. In answer to your question about seminarians as future priests, this is not an easy question to find an answer to. This is a personal matter, I would say. There is no standard or well-defined template that you need to do this or that and then you'll be fine. We have spoken about fear already, and we know that we all have our fears. Even in the military, what they say is that if the person doesn't have any fear, this is a dangerous person, because probably the person is not okay. The person could be sick. Fear for all of us, for all people, for seminarians, for soldiers, for priests, it is okay to have some fears. When you think of your future calling, the choice of what you want to do, it's important to make sure that fear doesn't prevail in your life, doesn't rule over your life, and doesn't govern your life. I know many priests who are not sure whether they would like to be military chaplains. They have fears about living conditions, about food, about possibilities to see their families, and the possibility of taking a leave. Also, there is another thing: when you hear an order from your commander and you need to do this. We know a lot about obedience, being priests. We know that we need to listen to our commanders because they know what they are instructing you to do. When I joined the army, I understood that I knew nothing about the army have to behave about subordination, about many other things. And with your presence, you bring Christ, you bring teachings of Christ in the military structure. That is something that was not present there. It was integrated. That gives a rise to something new. So first and foremost, fear. Do not forget about your fears and make sure that you know how to cope with your fear. If some of you have willingness to become a military chaplain and you have some doubts because of many conversations that are around us, we don't want to bring up all of these matters. However, my recommendation would be to give it a try. You know that no one is going to force you to put on a military uniform and to become a military chaplain. You can try, you can make an attempt, you can spend a month with our soldiers. Maybe there is somebody that you know, and you would open yourself from another perspective, and then you will make a choice whether this is something that is okay for you, or that is something that you'd rather not do. It's about a choice. You can try and see it. This is about military chaplaincy. Being a priest in a parish is similar, but there will be challenges in both of these cases. In my parish, there are soldiers who returned from the battlefield, and with some of them it is easy to interact. They have families, they have wives, they have children, they want to work, they are highly motivated. There are some of them whose lifestyle was quite different, religion-wise, and at the level of society, and they are the same after their service. They want to lead their own lives as they see it. It doesn't really mean that you have to save them all, unless the person asks you for help or has this request. There isn't much you can do. There are challenges, many challenges. Also, at times of war, there were many who migrated during the Great National War. Some of them, they were tortured, murdered in Siberia, in other places, but there are many of them who stayed. This is part of our history, the history of priesthood also. That is something to be analyzed, to be explored. We need to open our hearts for Christ, for our hearts to be close to Christ, so that He can help us and direct us where we could be of optimal use. I don't say that I don't like my church, my parishioners, but I think that there is a place where I'm more needed and I can be of more use. There is no general stereotype that it is a must for you. Military chaplaincy, my recommendation is try it. No one is going to arrest you, to make you wear military uniform, deploy you in the east of Ukraine. This is a good experience. I've had this experience. And when I returned, I knew that I would like to do it once again. Though before that, I didn't know about what the future holds for me. That was my first attempt, and I decided to continue doing that. Also be mindful that all servicemen are different. The way they reintegrate is different. But it's important to help. Do not turn away if they need some help, to bring them to a hospital or anything else that is in need. Now I have more possibilities because I'm wearing a military uniform. I can go to a hospital and I can see militaries there. It's easier for me to cross the checkpoints, and it's important that our lives are of importance because we can help many with our service. I would like to pass the microphone to Olena and Pavlo. Yes, so in answer to the same question? I see. I'm thinking back of my first experience of 2014 when we had a training on conflict resolution between veterans and social service. There were many clashes, so to say, and there was a lot of disagreement there. We had different formats of trainings. We had a 2-day training. There was a training program, of course, and there was some spare time where people could interact. We had an evaluation form. We had some servicemen who served at the front line. They had some formal education. They had their training from military academies. And there was this question, what did you like about the training? It was a feedback session, actually. And what he answered was, that was one colonel, that we really like the girls here, but what we don't like is that we still have a lot of horilka left. That is why when I thought of my expectations, that I really need to know about something, to know answers to some questions, it's not that it didn't work that way. I understood that these are great people with a great sense of humor. A great sense of humor is something which could also be extremely useful in adaptation. As far as fears are concerned, mentioned here, it's important to know yourself, especially if you work with servicemen. I would like to say as your colleague, but I'm also somebody who is a representative of a helping profession. You work with yourself. I am sure that you know what you can give and what you cannot give. All of us by nature are gifted because we can establish contacts. Sincerity is the best tools to be congruent. If I'm happy, then I am happy. If I feel sad, then I feel sad. If I'm honest, I am honest. I can be standing next to you and I don't know how to help you. I think it is very important to be honest and genuine here. In reference to adaptation and to what Oleg has mentioned, the graduality of this process, because it could be a shock to those people who return from the battlefield. The first thing that people try to do is to have these plans, short-term, long-term, to live without others and to gradually return to their previous roles. There is a scheme of adaptation. It is adaptation to hierarchy, and in our case, the state is something that presents hierarchy. It is about social services and other things. This is adaptation in family, with your neighbors, and this is also self-adaptation, getting back to yourself, and how I'm going to deal with the experience that I've endured, because it will always stay with me. During our trainings, we always add different resources, different materials. Stephen Junger is an author that I recommend. The Tribe, a well-known book. Volodymyr Ulyanov, Combat. Another book, and Veteran Hub. There is another interesting study, is The Past of a Veteran, where you have the description of adaptation and reintegration.
There's also a great research of the organization called SEDAS, that's research for veterans and veterans. And I don't remember the authors, but this is very good research. A Warrior Once, A Warrior Forever, and also a book, The Assassination, and it's been published by Nash Format. So it gives a lot of information about what happens to a person's mind when they serve in the army, when they have to kill, and so on. I would like to ask a question to Ola and Pavlo, and then a theological question to Taras, and then you will be able to add. So what concerns resilience when you lose interest to life through this break up of relations with the close per people. So how do you support resilience then? What do you do in such situations? It's a very interesting question. Thank you for the question. Resilience. If there's no one to go back to, if there's no one waiting for your home, then you have your fellow combatants, you have your friends whom you can talk to. You may also go to a psychologist or to a chaplain or to a military commander or any other serviceman whom you might not know, but this is a person who is ready to listen to you. I had a case when I went to one of the units, and I had some group trainings there, and one soldier came to me and said, I have this problem and you came here, so can I talk to you? And I said yes. I talked to him, I gave him some pieces of advice, and I said okay, thank you. And then a couple of days he went on a leave, and his wife called me because I usually give my phone number to people and I let them call at any time they need, to be that during the day or during the night. So his wife calls me, he has a panic attack, what should I do? And that was a topic we discussed there about the panic attack and about how to overcome stupefaction. And I told the wife, yes, you can call me or talk to any person. This is this train effect. When you sit next to a person you don't know, you can tell them whatever you want, because then you will leave and the train and you will never see that person again. So you have to talk, not hold everything inside, because when we hold everything inside, we get deeper and deeper and deeper, and at some point we cannot understand where we are, where it all started, and where it all could end. Even if people are afraid or ashamed of saying something, and by the way, I also share context of anonymous psychologists, psychotherapists. If you're afraid that someone will learn about it, just call them and don't introduce yourself. Just ask your questions, and we always tell them there are no stupid questions. When I was in training, I was told ask questions. If you're not asking questions, that means you don't understand anything, you're not learning anything, and you will not be able to do anything with this knowledge. But if you ask questions, that means that you are starting to understand things. And by the way, even if there is no one at home, there are no fellow soldiers, there are animals, there's music. We have many cats, and they help get rid of stress very well. They just come to your lap, and you pat this cat, and you see some bombs flying or missiles, but you have this comfort of having a cat or a dog or many other animals. So that's it. Well, maybe I missed something. Maybe Pavlo could add something. We were on an expedition together, so I know some people and I know some stories. I can tell the following thing. 2 stories which keep these soldiers in the army. The first one, people went to defend their friends, their family. Another reason they go into the army because of their values. And these are 2 very important reasons. First, because they want to defend some specific things, and before speaking about Ukraine in general, they think about specific people, their children, their wives, their friends, and then their values. In this case you mentioned, we both know it. when you lose the reason of why a person is fighting, because Ukraine, I would say Ukraine is a value, and you lose this connection with the family. For example, a wife divorces with you and goes abroad and says, well, you have your life, I have mine. Of course, this is a big stress. And this is the reason you were fighting for, and now you have no reason. A person is still there, but there is no reason. And this line of why the person was fighting is lost as well. So it's good when a person has them values, because that's what may help this person cope. Because you lose one reason, but you have another one, which is also important. I'm protecting not only myself, but also the family of my fellows and my friends. What can help in this case? And first and foremost, there are the groups of control of combat stress right now, and there are some chaplains, although there are a few of them. But before they will learn about that, the fellow soldiers know about it, because they were in the same trenches with you. You live in the same room with them. So it's very good if there was a psychologist working with the personnel, because they are the first to identify this. They see a person behaving in a different manner. We all have suffered the losses because, well, I had the story. There were many stories like that, for example, but I went out at 5 o'clock in the morning, and at 8 in the morning we already have a fellow soldier killed, and he lies, well, very close to you. Your fellows are people who notice the first. Psychologists might not see that. Other people might not see that, but your fellows, people who are next to you, they see these things, identify these things, especially when they know that there is a story behind it, like some conflicts in a family, when a wife wants to divorce, or there is some story. There have been so many, well, cases when a wife was beaten and he wants to drop everything and go there and solve her problems. So my vision is that fellows have to identify this, because they say, well, that's okay, well, we are fighting a war, so, well, that's not a problem. But actually, they have to know whom they can tell about it. It's a very good thing if you have a very good commander. Well, but there are commanders who say, well, go do your job, and then we'll discuss this. No, you have to process this first, and then you can send a person do some job. So if there is a psychologist and a chaplain, these are people who can actually help. If an important value is lost, the value has to be either replaced by a different one. You need to show a new one to a person, because there are many cases when a fellow soldier dies, is killed, and the person is not thinking about their wife or children at this moment. They are thinking about this fellow at this moment. And if this fellow is killed or wounded, they risk their life because their connection is very strong. And after the war, it remains very strong, and it may be stronger than connection with the family, because these are the relations which are stronger because you save somebody's life, because it's a matter of honor and dignity. So fellows are more important sometimes than the families, and in this case it's very important for the chaplain or for a psychologist or for a fellow soldier to give you a new value. Because just saying everything is going to be fine, well, it's not going to be fine, because you have to solve a problem, and you cannot solve it when you're at the front line. And that's what I mentioned. The case is the person leaves the trenches and goes back home because they need to solve a problem. And then you have those stories when a person spent 1.5 years at the front lines, and then they come back to the rear, and they solve the problem in not a very good way, and they have to, well, and they are then brought to responsibility and imprisoned. How do we practically answer the questions about senses, about losses, about why someone is suffering and someone is not, and why some get this experience and some don't? Thank you for the question. I think I should answer this question by another question. In this, for us as pastors, as priests, as those who are close to these church structures or various forms of service, it is important for us to understand that God did not create a mission for the church, but created the church for his mission, the cause and effect relation. So if the God created church for its mission, then well, this is the answer to the question of existence of God. And this is not a juxtaposition, but what differs us from social workers or secular psychologists when we speak about psychological assistance, it actually includes this answer to the question, where is God in all this? And I'm trying to say that the answer to the question, where is God in the lives of ours? Well, we can look for this answer in when we can recognize the presence of God in our life, and especially in traumatic experience, and when we can recognize it. And we'll also briefly add that when my brother died, he was killed in action, and I was going to the cemetery, and Andrei was in a coffin, and there was a cross there and a wreath, and it was a very traumatic experience when I came to realize that our family, there were 11 children of us in the family, now there are only 10 of us, and I couldn't work for a couple of weeks, neither in the church nor as a volunteer. I was as if paralyzed until I recognized that I have to write a letter to my brother, not to refuse from coming all the way, and I have to do that. So this piece of advice we've heard about trying and well going. So this is an answer to the question, is God there? Well, so you can go and be in that environment and then find some theological answers to this question. Thank you. Just from the practical standpoint, as priests, we often see people in very special and very tragic circumstances. These circumstances pass, and you can see God who turns evil as a certain mass into certain quality of good. These are people who have witnessed losses, who have had a very difficult life path, and start acting more actively in their community and their church. These are also historical cases we can refer to. From the point of view of the past, we can see how it all changed and started reviving. The secret of God is close to us. But these are the thoughts that I have. When you do good, God blesses you. When you do bad things, God punishes you. Well, to a certain extent, we can see that, but this is more of the popular approach, not a theological one. God allows these cases of challenges and sins, and we can think about the Apostle Paul. Whatever doesn't kill us makes us stronger, so that we can cope with something else. So a person doesn't have to be a sinner to be punished. Some people seem to be good people, but they still have various cases in their families, various trials, a child dying, or a wife dying, or a husband dying. So did people do bad things? No, but this is a trial that came into their life. It's very painful, it's very difficult, but they have to live through it, and when I have these trials, they don't necessarily are for the sins we have made. It may be just experience, just as we can see from Job's life. It brought the benefits later. So we have to live through it with dignity so that we become better later on. Any questions? Because we have just some time left. Glory to Jesus Christ. My name is Makari. I'm a student of the Kyiv Seminary of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church. In the beginning of the full-scale invasion and later on, I had a lot of experience volunteering in military hospitals with wounded military, and the experience was very different. Sometimes you get a charge of energy from that person, but sometimes the traumas of another person may be contagious in a way. So this is a question about self-help, I would say, because when you work with people who have a lot of negative experience, and when you have this experience and you cannot cope with it, you cannot help that person. Well, a drowning person cannot save another drowning person. So there were different cases. So when a person, for example, snaps at you and you don't know how to answer, so you keep silent, and a person then thanks you for listening to them. And this is a question to all of you. Where do you find these internal forces from the prayer perspective, the psychological perspective, some personal things?
If to speak about hospital cases, I know many organizations which do the same thing. As far as this case is concerned, usually NGOs or some actors who help veterans in hospitals, for their volunteers, they try to support them psychologically, because it's not easy to deal with that. It's not easy to deal with for psychologists. They also have supervisors, the people who can help them. So if there is if you have a possibility to go to a professional, it is always great, especially for those people who haven't had this experience before. You are absolutely right in what you are saying, that it's the same thing with an oxygen mask on a plane. You help yourself first, and only then you can put it on your child. If you do not have enough resources, you cannot share these resources with somebody. The same as with love. How can you give somebody more love if you don't have enough? We know that some people have some experience and they can integrate this experience. It's important to be responsible here. If it is possible to use some services, use them. In Ukraine, unfortunately, we still have a problem with that, with psychological help and the people who are willing to use it. For some people, it is physical activities. Some people go to mountains for the weekend. They spend some time on their own. They have their batteries recharged doing that. This is a very individual question. And if you are not alone doing that, it's important to share. You're not alone with this problem. There are more people who have the same situation. Some volunteers could have similar stories with other veterans. This is a hospital. You have people who are injured and wounded. It is always great to have somebody from the same surroundings, a veteran, a family member who have somebody in the army. It is not so much about you wanting to have some reward, because you also serve, you want to help. Sometimes people take it as a personal offense. If it were you, it would be somebody different. especially in hospitals, because we've discussed it before, if it is okay to do that or not to do musical concerts and other things. When we had volunteers coming to hospitals and they wanted to have some music played, but the person was concussed and they couldn't really listen to this music. There are different approaches to sad complex cases when something doesn't suit somebody else's needs. So my piece of advice is to see a psychologist if you have a need. Another one is your closer circle, those people who do the same thing, and another one is individual. It could be swimming, it could be hiking. It is very important that you let this energy go, because it accumulates, and then one day you can just collapse, you can have a burst. It could be directed at your family, at your friend, at a veteran. You can also lose the motivation of the person who does want to help. So for helping professions, it is important to be able to take a leave. It is for psychologists, social workers. I do not want to say that veterans belong to a vulnerable group of people, but I mean those professions where you work with certain risks, they need some additional resources because they are more likely to burn out. They need to replenish their sources. I travel a lot. I spend usually 8 months on the road. Well, usually that's the average time spent. For me, what works with me, what keeps me grounded, is spending some time with my pet, taking a walk with my dog. We have a certain communication with my dog. We are different by nature, of course, because I have my human nature and the dog has the dog nature. So if we can communicate, it means that we can communicate with others transcendentally. What also helps me is journaling. I have a blog. Sometimes I cannot go to bed unless I write something down in my journal. I try to reflect on my emotional and psychological condition, and then you will know how you feel. These are the coping strategies that I resort to. Thank you for your question. What helps me personally is psychotherapy, groups of support, because I'm dealing with unidentified loss, some other people who can help me. I also have this belief that my resource is the resource of my son. My coping is a training that I developed. I share what I know. I receive feedback and I find it extremely inspiring. I'm also mindfully living through the moments of joy. If there is something that could bring me joy, I like the temperature of water, or there is a nice smell of a person sitting next to me. I have great audience here. I have great panelists at this discussion. This is something that charges my batteries and helps me to find strength. Thank you. If to be very specific, to answer a question of a seminarian, a future priest, there was a practice that we had in our churches of spiritual mentorship, spiritual fathers. It has been lost. I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and he said that he doesn't have anybody to turn to for help. And I told him that probably you have become that person that other people can turn to, can ask for help. If you are a chaplain in hospitals, was think if you go to a priest who work with the faithful, they will have a different experience. Your experience of working in a hospital differs. That is why it is important that you have somebody to address your questions to. If there is something that is confounding for you, that is of your concern, you need to find a solution to that. These practices are different for all Christians, for all humans, for believers, for non-believers. We have already heard many great recommendations of what could be used in our lives for your life to be full, to change the circumstances, to find something nourishing, to find something positive, something which could really bolster you. It could be saying a prayer, reading something, or sometimes even if you pray a lot, you can still have the same problem, because if that is something that is deep down, you need to let it go. You need to release it, and also you need to make sure that it doesn't leave any traces or roots, because it can further spread and you can be overwhelmed again, because we as people are emotional. Sometimes we are very superficial, yes, and sometimes we take everything so close to our hearts. Life teaches us to be more firm. Doctors who perform surgeries for some period in their life, they also had to live with this idea that when they cut somebody's bodies, it will hurt. Also during the rehabilitation stage, it is going to hurt, but they do it nevertheless. They cannot follow their doubts in their profession. They need to be 100% committed to what they do. The same works here. If there is something, you need to find a solution and you need to move on. And motivation, as Pavlo has mentioned, current challenges, this is something that I see very often in the army, that yes, psychologists are needed. This is a person who is there to help you. Many of them are still skeptical. I still say that it is important. Help psychologists. It is their profession. They will share what they know. Because we learn a lot from abroad, because we didn't have it before. A lot of literature and trainings and materials. That is now we have something which is new to us. This is just a sprout, but it will grow into something bigger. It's important for us to have a very good foundation for the future generations, for them to live better lives, for a healthy nation, for a renewed nation. We need to utilize everything that we have at our disposal to be healthy. Yes, we have time for another question. Glory to Jesus Christ. I am Reverend Oleg. I'm a military chaplain of the 1st Brigade. I'm an officer. Thank you for this great sharing that we can have this. I have a question to our speakers. I think it is our commitment at the level of different levels to have these discussions at the level of deanery, archbishopy. Of course, we have some smaller talks and discussions, but it is so important for us to share more of that. We need to shape our future generations. We have bishops, we have chaplains, we have priests, we have representatives of universities. We all need to have access to this information. That is why I am deeply grateful. We have also touched upon glorification theme. There are many people who were buried, and we know that there are different reasons why people die. Of course, there could be a different grade and different intensity of your input. For example, if you speak about drug addicts or those people who are addicted to alcohol, we know that very many people in the army, they still have this problem. Many of them try to deal with that, but they are not always successful. Sometimes they return to the civilian life and they still have their addictions, though they are so proud of them being in the army. So actually they didn't do much in the army, but because of the addictions and many other things, but they are so proud of themselves and they brag a lot. What about these people? How do we deal with this category of people? Thank you, Reverend. You have brought up a very important matter here, this part of communication. Very often we have close circles. We had in our diocese, we had a joint meeting. We had representatives of the clergy, we had representatives of the military, and we could see that actually we still have so many stereotypes in our heads as part of what we believe in, and sometimes they contradict the reality. Firstly, and secondly, there is another danger when priests think that they are experts in all the areas possible. So it is the spiritual part, and they act as social workers and as psychologists. So they enter some aspects of human life where they do not have expertise, and they can actually do some harm. That is why it is important that we have some good results after such discussions. It's important to have it at top levels, but it is also important to have it here when we have real life, to have these communities at our level where we know each other and we as priests know whom we can recommend. I can recommend this psychologist because he is a professional, because let's be honest, some psychologists are not professionals. They have not received a good training because psychology in the past was something complementary. We didn't have a serious attitude, historically saying, towards psychology. That is why I'm grateful for your comment, and it's important for us to do that if you really want to help. We have made this attempt. We will continue doing that. We know that it is good to have this communication between priest, military, and psychologists because they know about real needs then. Thank you for your question. I will respond to the second part of the question. You see, I believe that substance addiction is something which is born in family systems. And there are experts, specialists who specialize on that, and they usually work with families. This is one of the preconditions if you really want to change the situation for better. So if the person with an addiction joins the army and they go to the front line with this addiction, with all of that, then they return with the same addiction. It is one story. There could be a different story when the person suffers from PTSD, and on top of that, they also have some coping mechanism, and this is exactly why they abuse alcohol or drugs, because it helps them to cope with flashbacks, with many other things that they have to deal with because of their PTSD. That is why I am convinced that it is so important for us to build a culture of, this is not the culture of tolerance, I'm just trying to find a good term for that, because in our society, we do not really like to feel sorry for somebody because we find it humiliating. However, compassion to a person who is sick, because it is a sickness. It's important for a person to find all possible means and ways and solutions to get better, to recover, and it is up to that person to decide if they want to get better. And once again, working with family systems and also turning attention to families without condemnation, without shame or guilt, because there is a certain cycle. There are many books and there's a lot of literature dedicated towards this topic. It is not an easy question to have an answer to. People need to have solutions, but it has to be a decision of a person to do that.
We, with Father Oleg, have the opportunity to keep in touch, and we mainly discuss military-related topics. And the topic is very broad and very deep, and we cannot have just a very simple approach to that, because what kind of person this was, and what kind of person will come back to us. These are the things we are not always ready to accept, because there is also this thing like the understanding of the community, and when a person is very depressed, because we cannot imagine what they have lived through and what they have lived through during the first year. Well, because they had no weapons, they had to stop the enemy with basically their bare hands, and all those things that are being used against them. So one thing is to hear about that, and the other thing is to be in the middle of that. So not everyone can manage that, and the burial of warriors like that should also be decent. Well, the understanding and support of the family, these are very important things, because we have many people who condemn something, but they have never been there, and that's a big problem, because they will not come and not help. We can see that if a mother's son is killed in action, then nobody will come and ask you, do you need some help in the field? Do you need some firewood or something? There is no respect from the community there. And then also nobody supports the widows and the orphans. This is also about practice. We have to work with the society itself. And I had a chance to talk to a commander of one of our battalions, and there was a topic which is similar to this one, that there is no culture of alcohol drinking in our country. This is a big problem. What has remained after the Soviet Union, like broken families and distorted ideas. We still live by those standards. So everything that is happening should be distorted. It's not the spiritual things are valued, but those things which should make us happy or something, but it actually distorts our reality. So it's not only the problem that these persons have to be treated in a specific way or they will become some outcasts. It's about respect to people. It's very difficult for them. They broke down at some point in time, and you cannot just discard them. You cannot condemn them. You have to work with them, and they may open up, and then you will be able to do something. And if a person doesn't open up, then it's very difficult. So this is the problem of the society. It's not a problem of a specific a soldier, a chaplain, or a psychologist, or a unit. It's a problem of the society. We have to educate the new generation, a healthy generation. And we have to do, all our best at all stages of education and upbringing. Thank you. Just one short question. What concerns the discussion of complicated topics, I would like to suggest that there is dialogue in action, and there are the methods, the circles of how we can start talking about difficult topics, and then we can also speak even about Arab Christians. I would like to ask a question to the fathers, because I'm interested in the following question. The psychotherapy, in psychotherapy, there is this tendency for supervision. So is there a tendency for sharing the experience among the priests? And if not, then is it possible to organize things like that? Because I know that there are many combatants in the parishes, and every priest had some contact with them, so maybe it's possible to discuss some situations that might arise, at least theoretically, or something like that. Well, from a very practical point of view, since I am also a participant of the Dialogue in Action project, we had supervision for priests from Pitkamytska, and after that we created a group Olena was very active in adding materials to the group, and this is the place where you can hear. And this is one of the examples of the platform. So, of course, the meetings are there when we have these meetings with the of the priests, and then we have the meetings of catechists. The question is of quality, but nevertheless, the project I've named looks most efficient because it gives the possibility to put into contact the priests and the experts, and in those questions where you have no answers, somebody else can help you with that. In our church, we had this experience when our pastor served for 15 years approximately, and as an evangelist, we don't have this culture of mentorship in our church, and very often it is said that if something happens, God is behind me. But as a church, we see that pastors need spiritual recovery, and we organize recollections. Parish supported this with time and with financial resources. And I think the same goes for the priests and also the communities. They have to understand that a priest needs at least some recollections for, half a year or a year. To have some division, mutual assistance, there has to be a step forward. So a priest I've been communicating quite frequently, we are friends, he wanted to do something for the servicemen. It seemed very nice, and he planned everything, but they didn't come. And then another question was asked why, and they were not disposed to do that. They probably didn't understand what he wanted to do. And so we need to, study that. So 3 days ago or 4 days ago, this priest called me and he said, I had a meeting with a combatant who knows me, and he came to visit me together with his fellow who has just come on leave. And it's easy for me to talk to the person I know well, but I didn't know how to talk to that new person. And he told that, I would like to talk to you. I would like to help you, but I don't know what you would like to hear. So what do you want to hear from me as a priest? Let them express their opinion. So this is the first discussion, the first contact. There were 2 of them. Next time there will be 4 or 5 of them, and then you will be able to organize some recollections, with families, with children. There are different projects there. It's difficult, but new things are developing. You can go into the mountains with them. Maybe not into mountains, but into Medjugorje. So these people are leaving the front lines, and the families remain here, and they come here, and the things that were, before the front, there are problems and difficulties, but this could help them because they are leaving the circles of hell, and they say they feel more comfortable there. So these trips have to be useful. Then you will be able to engage other people. You will be able to raise some problems, advise something. So we are priests, so there has to be a dialogue with someone who understands, someone who knows how to find contact with people. So sometimes I didn't manage to find very close contact with a person, but with time it becomes easier. So don't think that you have baked bread and the combatants will come and start hugging you. No, this is a very short time, but not everyone approaches me yet. So there are still studying me, looking at me. So there's this element of trust. Can we trust him or not? Well, you don't fight with him. Well, they come to you, or you come to them. So they want to know you. They want to understand whether they can trust you. And this is not the level of the parish. It's a totally different life. So working in a parish and working as a chaplain, these are totally different things, despite the fact that we pray to the same God, but there are differences. So there has to be a specific approach here in this situation. Thank you, Father. And summing up this panel of ours, which was quite a lengthy one, I would like to say that, in my opinion, the value of community is that you can always ask for spiritual supervision, not only from a priest. It sometimes can be a person you don't know at all. It may be a veteran or a militaryman who can shift your focus of attention. I would like to thank all the participants for their reports, for giving us a variety of various experiences. I would like to thank everyone, both online and offline, for listening to us. I would like to thank the Konrad Adenauer Fund and the Evangelical Church for their support. And now it is the lunchtime and lunch break for us, but we will resume at 3:30, and that will be the international seminar of the Ukrainian Catholic Christian Academic Society.